Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan, in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, my dad, Mitch McMahon, my aunt, Lori McMahon Summerfield, and Dale Croft from the Lowell Historical Museum.
In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context as to what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time he wrote these.
In this episode, Dad celebrates Christmas and New Year's Eve. We learn about a mission to Cognac, and we finish 1943 with a letter from someone special.
Ah, yep, this episode features the last letters that Bruce wrote in 1943. We talked about how he was getting ready for Christmas last week, and now the holidays are even closer. So we're going to start with a letter that he wrote 2 days before Christmas, December 23rd, 1943, in his own words.
Thursday night, dear Mother and Dad, 2 days before Christmas. If I thought last year that Christmas didn't seem like Christmas, this year is doubly true. Occasionally in the last few days, I've realized with the start that Christmas will soon be here. Not because I'd seen anything that reminded me of the date, but more because I'd noticed it was December. At first thought this might appear to be a sad situation, but when you think of it in a different light, it's really the best way. If Christmas season was full of things I used to do, I'd surely become lonesome and homesick. As it is, Christmas is just another day, and aside from a few nostalgic remarks that come here or there in conversation, it isn't a time to be lonesome for the good old days. I'm sure I prefer it this way. When you had your Christmas tree, I hope you didn't think I was sitting over here pining for home. I was probably not even thinking about Christmas at the time. You'll probably be glad to hear that I have my picture taken and I'm waiting for the prints. A London photographer did the job, and I hope you like the result. I bought 6 prints and would have gotten more, but they are so darned expensive over here. If you want more, you can have them reprinted at home. If my blouse doesn't look too sharp, don't blame the photographer. I was having my good blouse fixed, a couple of ribbons sewed on, and so I wore my old one. I wired you a couple days ago, and it should have come to you the next day. It wasn't expensive, and I'll be doing it as often as I get a chance from now on. Reason only Dad's name was on it was because they charged for every single word. Okay, Mom? Got to get to sleep now. All my love and prayers. Your loving son, J. Bruce.
We have this picture that he got taken in London. We've actually used it a lot on different podcast promotions and things, but we'll include it again on our Instagram and in pictures on the Lowell Historical Museum website. It's the one he's looking it looks like the professional, photographer one. He's got his jacket and coat on. And I think that the copy we have almost says your loving son, J. Bruce, kind of signed. He signed it.
Yeah.
to give to his family, which is cute. So we'll put that up again so we know which picture he's talking about. So on Christmas Day, Bruce wrote another letter about his day off in his own words.
Christmas 1943. Dear Mom and Dad, well, there aren't many more days left in this old year. Today is Christmas Day, and I'll be darned if it seems any different than the rest. Last night I spent finishing a book, The Robe, and went to bed quite early. This morning I didn't get up until late, and after late Mass I went over to the club to wait for dinner. For dinner today we had turkey, and it was very good. The food is a lot better in A mess, regardless of what they tell those eating in B mess. Besides turkey, we had raised biscuits, peas, bread, and lots of butter, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, and swell gravy dressing. That was very good. And good coffee and chocolate cake and ice cream. Not a bad layout, eh? After dinner, there wasn't anything to do, so I just lazed around this afternoon, dozing here in the room, listening to the radio, and eating Christmas candy. Try as you will, over here there just isn't any Christmas spirit. When in London a few days ago, there wasn't any sign that it was only a few days until Christmas. This is true because these people haven't much of anything to make for Christmas spirit. Some of the stores had toys advertised in their window displays, but there were very few, and some of them were used. In one place, I saw toys that were obviously secondhand and that were selling for unbelievable prices. A doll that at home might have cost $1, selling for £2 or £3. Now, these people have been through a lot, and you can't expect things to be the same when they have so little. A lot of the Americans have made toys for the English kids and seen to it that they have a good Christmas. They took up a collection for this purpose, and you'd be gratified to see how liberal everyone was. I believe that this sort of thing does a lot for the Anglo-American relations, certainly a lot more than a lot of tripe in the newspapers. Doesn't seem to be much more than I can think of to write, so I'll close for tonight with this wish that this is the last Christmas that will be separated. May God be with you, my dearest mother and dad. Your loving son, J. Bruce.
Wow, it sounds like he had a fantastic holiday.
Jesus, and
Good food, just laying around, taking some naps. Yeah.
lots of butter.
Lots of butter.
We come by that naturally.
Of course,
and
Candy.
candy. God darn it. Okay, so each night that I'm having too much butter on my potato and a little sneak of jelly beans, then I'm like, I know,
Well, you
come
know-
by naturally.
You know
Yeah.
exactly who that came from. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Well, now it's time to get into our segment where we talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell in December 1943. And we're going to start with some Lowell people that Bruce mentions in some of his letters. So we're going to read an excerpt from December 28th, 1943, in his own words.
Tuesday, December 28th, 43. Dear Mother and Dad, I received a letter from Lawrence Ridgway today. He's over here in a medical outfit. He said Babe Wingeier was also here, but he didn't know his address. If you know what his address is, let me know. I'm going to try to get together with Ridge and give him a ride in the Miss.
That would be the Michigan Miss, right? His plane. So got that in quotes. Do any of you know who these people are? Lawrence Ridgway or Babe Wingeier? Wingear?
Babe
Wingeier.
Wingeier, yeah. He talked a lot about Babe Wingeier.
Oh, like a friend of his?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I know the name.
Me too.
Oh, all right. Well, yeah,
And
they must have all
Ridgway,
been.
and Ridgway.
What?
And Ridgway.
Oh, okay. So they obviously are veterans because they're over there, like Bruce. So I figured maybe Dale might be able to tell us at least about Lawrence Ridgway. Yeah.
Yeah, I found a couple articles in the Lowell Ledger. One is dated March 29th, 1945. Sir Lawrence Ridgway was killed in action in Henningen, Germany on March 15th, 1945. He entered military service on April 23rd, 1942. He was a fine young man and was well liked by all who knew him. He would have been 34 years old on May 20th. He was employed by the Lowell Manufacturing Company before enlisting. Then, 2 years later, on December 14th, 1947, there was this article. Military funeral service will be held for Lawrence O. Ridgway. The casket remains were accompanied to Lowell by uniformed Army escort from the Chicago Distribution Center of Graves Registration Division.
Oh.
So two
years
years
later.
after he passed away, his remains came back with an escort, military escort. So
Okay.
that's all. There's a picture,
Wow.
the picture in the December issue of him. He looks like a jovial kind of guy. His picture looks very,
Aw.
he's got a big smile on his face and looks like he enjoyed life.
That's a bummer. So he came over with Bruce clearly around this time.
Maybe a couple years older than Dad, maybe.
Yeah.
30,
Hopefully they
34 there.
Hopefully they went up in the plane at some point before.
I couldn't find anything about how he was. There was an article next to him about another gentleman from Lowell that was killed by a sniper. He was a commander type, and he was going from foxhole to foxhole, making sure that his soldiers underneath him were getting the right rations, and he got picked off by a German sniper.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this just impacts
Yep.
everybody in Lowell. So yeah, he's losing friends. Well, that's a sad update. Okay. But hopefully they got together when they were over in Europe. As I was looking in the ledger for, mentions of Bruce or mentions of Marg Allen, my grandmother, I will periodically find names that we've talked about before on here. So it's always great to, I remember talking about her. Our favorite whack from Lowell, Margaret Niles. She went overseas around this time. So, she's doing her part. And then I saw someone named Doris Christensen, which I know we've talked about, like Christensen's drugstore, and that, so I'm sure she was related perhaps to that group. But anyway, she joined the Women's Navy Reserve. So, I mean, I've just been surprised during this, research for this podcast, just how many women from Lowell, really took a, leadership role in the war. So either, literally joining, parts of the Army, but, or Grandma Maggie, leaving her teaching job to go work at Willow Run. And I don't know, there's another whole podcast in there about women of Lowell during this
There you
time,
go.
which is awesome.
Sacrifices. Yeah.
I know, it's so cool. And I don't know any of these women. It'd be great to, if you have family members out there listening, let us know. I want to know.
Yeah.
So also on December 28th, Bruce wrote a V-mail to his parents with some war news in his own words.
Dear Mom and Dad, your V-mail dated December the 13th was on my desk when I returned tonight. That's pretty good service for the Christmas rush. Guess the way you received mine, 12 in 1 week, the service back isn't quite as good. When you receive this, Christmas and New Year's Day will be nothing but history. I'm confident that my next one will be spent with you. Our papers over here exclude nothing but optimistic words of the war's finish soon. There's been a big play on the news of General Ike's appointment as CNC of the invasion forces. Looks like the Americans will do the invading also. Our papers say 72% will be Yanks. Well, they picked the right men to do a difficult job. As one of our senators has said, there'll be invasion if they aren't brought to their knees sooner by our bombs. He certainly has a point there. I'm sorry to hear about Mary Jane Rutherford. All the sad news isn't confined to the war these days. Glad you realize it's your obligation to keep fit for me. It really won't be a great deal longer. You're the finest parents in the whole mad world. Your loving son, Jay Bruce.
So last week we learned about the Rutherfords. And then I believe Mary Jane Rutherford was Lawrence Rutherford's mother? I have to go back and read that thing. Anyway, Dale, what can you tell us about Ike, the appointment of Ike to the commander of the Allies?
Yeah, a lot of us know about it, but he was born in Texas on October 14th, 1890. He was brought up in Abilene, Kansas. Eisenhower was the third of 7 sons. He excelled in sports in high school and received an appointment to West Point to start out with. The Eisenhower's early Army career, he excelled in staff assignments, serving under General John J. Pershing, Douglas MacArthur, and after Pearl Harbor, General George C. Marshall called him to Washington to work on war plans. Based on his performance in the War Plans Division, Marshall nominated him to be command of all U.S. and Allied forces in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. In December 1943, after much deliberation, President Roosevelt decided that Eisenhower, not Marshall, would be Supreme Allied Commander in Europe and would be responsible for the planning and execution of the D-Day landings on June 6, 1944, codenamed Operation Overlord, and the liberation of Western Europe. His decisions was based on his leadership style, characterized by his ability to unite diverse Allied forces and his friendly yet commanding personality. After the war, Eisenhower continued to serve in high-level military positions and, of course, became our 34th President of the United States, serving from 1953 to 1961. And we started out calling him Mike. He referred to himself as a simple country boy nicknamed Ike, an abbreviation of his last name. He passed away on March 28th, 1969.
All right, yeah.
Just a quick summary.
Yeah.
He had a lovely wife, Mamie, she was a great lady too. So she was kind of like Delano Roosevelt's Eleanor.
Yeah.
She was very involved in women's rights and all that good stuff.
What's the CNC again? Appointed CNC commander in chief?
I think
or no?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, commander in chief would be the president, so I'm
right?
not sure. It must be
Say what
chief
again?
of command. In Bruce's letter, he wrote General Ike's appointment as CNC of the invasion forces. So
Chief commander?
He
chief commander.
Yeah,
chief,
there was different commands that he took. But
Okay. Alrighty.
they were long names, and I kind of shortened it up a little.
Well, I always knew him
that's-
as the Supreme Allied Commander, but I guess I didn't realize that it took a while. I didn't really think about that. So, I thought maybe he was like that all along, but I guess not. But yeah, so they're starting to plan D-Day. 6 months. We're still 6 months out from D-Day, but starting to plan it. I don't know. When we get to 1944, we'll get there.
That just gave me goosebumps. I'm starting to plan that 6 months out. Oh my.
And you already had the date?
I don't think so.
Okay, because
Some of
that occurred to me as Dale was reading, but maybe not.
No, I don't think they had an exact date till almost very close to the
time.
the exact date. But yeah, you got to plan it out. They knew it was. They knew. We talked about these Morocco conferences, and they go to Cairo, and I think that, they were always planning an invasion. Even Bruce writes about that too. There's going to be something moving, but
And of course, weather always played a huge part in it.
yeah, for sure. for sure.
Well, yeah, something to have the listeners look forward to is that picture of the guys when they announce it and they talk about D-Day. And
Oh, yeah.
I love that picture.
Yep.
Love
Yeah,
that picture.
so smart that he thought to take a photo of
Yeah,
the
their faces.
debriefing. Yeah. So it's now time for our segment where we reveal information we know about Bruce's flight missions. For this information, we have to consult flight records and mission diaries from the historical website of the 306 Bomb Group and all of its squadrons. At the end of 1943, Bruce flew 2 missions. One was called the Andy Gump mission, and that's in quotes in the mission reports and stuff. And it's, from what I could tell, a place just on the other side of the English Channel. This mission wasn't really very eventful, other than the fact that it was a tiny target. And the mission report sort of implies that maybe the field they were bombing was called Andy Gump, but can't be a place in France called Andy Gump. I'm just positive that doesn't seem right. So
Okay, we got to put Dale on researching that.
yeah, we'll
now.
have to figure out what in the world Andy Gump is referring to. But we will talk about his mission on the final day of 1943, December 31st, of course. He flew a mission to Cognac, France, and this is from the Combat Diary.
Cognac. The Eager Beavers put on a highly professional show today, one of which the squadron can be proud. Briefed for an infield west of Bordeaux, the group, led by our squadron, followed the lead of the 305th Group north of Bordeaux to a point where the 305th accidentally dropped its bombs.
Oh, man.
Here our crew, piloted by Captain Joseph Belser and Captain Tony B. Husband as co-pilot and Lieutenant Jack Samway as navigator, requested and got permission to bomb Cognac Airfield, an alternative target, which they could see off to the left. They then led the group and the 92nd Group to Cognac, where Captain Stanley Silverstein, observing the north part of the buildings to be hit already by some other group and black smoke rolling out, planted our bombs across the southern dispersal area where they could do the most good. Then the group fell into the CBW formation again and returned home, untroubled by fighters, except one FW-190, which Staff Sergeant Clinton E. Snyder picked off at 800 yards. This fighter was certainly destroyed. Lieutenants John Gassler, Russell Lawn, Joseph Gay, James Ray Coleman, J. Bruce McMahon, and Robert Gerald and their crews made the trip.
All right. Well, that's good. They improv a lot, I guess, right? Like, oh, we already hit this target. Let's go over here.
Yeah.
The mission report showed that Bruce's plane was a little bit damaged in this raid by some flak, but clearly not enough to, ground anybody. And maybe he went back. I don't know how much damage the plane had, but it does say like a little bit damaged was Bruce's plane. And the Eager Beavers hit another milestone. They were the first squadron in the U.S. Air Force to drop 1,000 tons of bombs on the Germans or on anybody. Wow. And they passed that mark on the last day of 1943. Wow. So they might have some reason to celebrate, yeah. I guess. But it was specifically Bruce's group. His squadron, the 368,
wow.
Were the ones that did that. Yeah. So then, of course, in the combat diary, there's a last sentence to mark 1943. So, Aunt Lori, do you want to read that last sentence out of there for us?
That night, being New Year's Eve, the squadron celebrated not only a good year, but a fine raid on the final day at the group party and looked confidently forward to 1944.
Yeah, so they had a big party. They have a New Year's Eve party to celebrate. And actually, we'll hear about this party next episode because Bruce talks about it a little bit in his first letter of 1944. But that's for next time. I know Aunt Lori, I know you've shown me pictures of at least one party in the war that Bruce was in. There's pictures of like men in like wigs and being silly, and
yep.
I don't know if that was obviously this party. Like, there's no way to figure that out.
Right.
But should I put that one on Instagram?
We have to make sure we double check to see when that was. Yeah.
We'll see, but I know we have some. We'll see what photos Bruce took. Maybe we won't reveal those. Who knows? But 1943 was a heavy year, of course, in the United States for Bruce. More to come, of course. So we want to finish 1943 off with some lighter letters. December 28th, 1943, he wrote a lot of letters that particular day. Females, letters. Oh, he must have had that day off, too. He wrote a V-mail just to Frank about a funny story involving Frank's expertise, electricity. So, in his own words.
Dear Dad, you better be taking more care of yourself, although with your stamina it seems a foolish suggestion. It's always seemed that the tougher your work became, the better health you were in. Thank my lucky stars that I received some of your good health. Wet feet and damp weather held no terrors for me, thanks to you. If you could see the job of wiring I did the other day, you would have died laughing. As you know, we wear heated suits with heated boots and gloves on missions. In the cockpit, it doesn't quite get so cold, so I decided to rig an outfit that would only heat the boots and gloves without the suit. Due to the resistance that you cut out when you disconnect a suit, it had to be rigged with a resistor. Well, I thought I had it okay and started to altitude one day, and when I got up a ways, I plugged it in, and you've never seen the 4th of July with as many fireworks. Burned out the boots, the gloves, not to mention my stomach where the thing rested on me. Guess I better stick to line work. Still, I thought it was a good idea, and I may get it yet. Get after that cold now, and I'll be with you soon. All of my love and prayers are with you. Your grateful son, Bruce.
You rigged up.
This sounds so like Dad.
Oh,
Does
I
it
was going
really?
to say,
He
absolutely.
looked so many things up.
You want to tell the different ones, a couple of the different ones. The one you know the squirrel. The squirrel.
Flower sifter. Oh, you're talking about electrical stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, he wanted to, rig up his suit a little differently. So, but of course, nearly electrocuted himself in the process.
He had trouble with one of the dogs. I forget which dog. Was jumping up on the windowsill outside the den. So he just ran a little electricity to a screen and put that up there. And,
And the dog would jump up and get a
Jake or
shot.
Max or whatever the dog's name. Only did it once or twice. And then what was crazy is that you could just pick up the screen and he would do anything you want him. Anyway.
Yeah. The squirrel.
The squirrel you're talking about.
On the bird feeder.
Oh. With the one with Arnie Kimball in there?
Well, no, he hooked wired electricity to the bird feeder so that the squirrel couldn't get up to the top and get the seed. Only he got a little hot, so mother started screaming, and we went out, and the squirrel was
just
hooked to the pole like this, just fried to the pole.
Oh my
So he had to go
God.
out and get it. And I remember he got a broomstick and had to take the squirrel off of it because it had been electrocuted.
Oh, good
so.
Lord. And then did you ever think about he was going to electrocute the poor birds?
No,
don't
because
know.
they weren't
It didn't
grounded.
go up that high?
They weren't grounded. So something about the ground. He knew how to do
Okay.
The birds were fine.
that. Birds are okay.
Squirrel, not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, he burned out his boots, gloves, and his stomach.
He
apparently.
was creative and inventive and
Yeah. Well,
a do-it-yourself kind of guy. That's for sure. Wow.
Well, he might still get it. He says. He's not giving up.
He burned a hole in his stomach and he said, "Well, I'm going to give it another shot."
I got another idea. I'll keep going with it.
Well, I cannot complain about the house that I have. I love the house that I have, the family house. But I did have, when we first moved in, I decided we better get an electrician in to see how everything was, because it's old. It was an old house. And I remember coming home that day and those electricians, they just smiled at me and shook their head and said, "Your dad was a very creative man." And he had a lot of things that were hot wired in the house. There was a clock that was hot wired, a few lights that were hot wired. But obviously it was just fine and dandy. Lasted for a long time when we were all
Did you
growing
have
up.
a bunch of three-way switches for your stairway and stuff that turned off at the bottom and at the top? And
We still have those. Yep,
Oh
we
my
still have
gosh,
those.
That's funny.
I like those.
That
yeah.
is too funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, we're going to switch things up a bit to finish 1943. For our final words of the year, we're actually going to read a letter written to Bruce. And we rarely ever get to see the other side of these letters. We don't have very many that were written to him. As Bruce has said before, he doesn't keep them much because he doesn't have storage. And so, remember, he burned all those? And I was like, oh, no. But this one
came through, huh? But
This one he wanted to keep. And so this female was written to Bruce on December 18th, 1943. And it is written by none other than Margaret Allen, his future wife. So in her own words this time.
Dearest, just a good night note. You probably haven't received the letter I wrote with my this week's, but just came home from Jan's shower, and I'm going to have one just as soon as you get back here, and someone has one for us. Darling, you're so sweet to write so often, and your letters are always so fun to read. I just had to let you know that I thought of you all evening long, even when Jan was singing My Hero, and I generally sleep through that one. So it just goes to show you, Lieutenant, you're mine. All my love, Margaret.
Aw, this is so sweet. Such a good note to end on. Apologies for the question marks in here, but I have to say, Grandma Maggie's handwriting
Not the
is
same.
not as easy to
Awful.
read
No, it's
as
hard.
Grandpa
It's
Bruce's
awful.
handwriting.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
very hard.
Very
to read.
distinctive. Yep.
I should have sent. You said you're pretty good at deciphering her
good at it. I've
handwriting.
read
I
a
should
lot
have
of her
sent it to you.
handwriting,
Well, I did the same thing when I was digitizing. When Mitch came over the house one day, I said, "I can't read your
yeah,
mom's.
yeah.
It's here."
So
you
there's
tell.
some word where it says this week's and then like question mark. There's some word there that I'm like I cannot make
Oh,
it
I
out.
know.
I don't know if it's actually Jane or Jan.
Oh, okay.
It's
Oh.
Not
Jane-
100% sure. It seems like Jan. I don't know. So I put both in there. So yeah, she's reading Anne Lori's reading my horrible transcription because I'm like, I cannot read this letter. Good thing it's short because some of the other ones we have of hers.
Well, we'll bring them in, and Mitch and I might
yeah,
be able
we're
to
gonna
decipher.
have- I'm gonna have to send them to you.
because I
You're gonna have
remember
to-
what I
yeah.
know it. Her M's look like W's. That's what I remember. So yeah, but I know I
Yep.
can read too.
Yeah, and she's got just like anyway. I'll no, the listeners can't see what I'm doing here with my hands, so it's pointless. But yes, we'll see. And because we'll have some more from Margaret in 1944. Turns out he managed to save those. He didn't give those up.
Yeah, it's good to hear mom's voice in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
thought that was a good note to end on, a letter from someone else. And so our next episode, this is basically our 1943 finale over here. Like I always say, our season 2 finale. We're into another year, and our next episode, 1944, a real big one. Lots of things changed.
Season 3.
Season 3 of Letters Home, 1944, another huge year.
Spoiler alert, D-Day.
Yeah, we got some big episodes coming up. You hear about D-Day. He does eventually leave Europe,
Yep.
So, and there's a wedding somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just a little preview into next season for sure. Thank you all, though, for listening to Letters Home. We hope you continue to listen as we go through Bruce's story. You can listen to Letters Home on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Thursday. The Lowell Historical Museum has digitized versions of Bruce's letters, so you can read them in full, along with primary sources for most of the people, places, and events we've talked about here today, plus more. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. We throw all our pictures up there. I do anyway. Thanks to Roger McNaughton for our podcast music and to WRWW 92.3 FM for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. Tune in or stream WRWW at lowellradio.org. See you next time.